played Forspoken? I sure have not. Not for lack of wanting to or knowing what it is, more just other stuff to do, not working in games journalism at the moment, don't really have a shit ton of time for an expensive big game at this juncture, etc. So I've mostly experienced this one the way I experienced most other big game titles the last year or two. Watching other people whine about it on social media, which in this case is mostly taking the form of complaints about the lead voice actress and their dialogue.
I just move shit with my freaking mind! Yeah, okay, that is something I do now. Magic, talk to sentient cuffs, kill jacked up beasts. You know what? I'll probably fly next.
Now you're just being ridiculous.
Oh, that's too far. Good to know there's a line. You sound like a serial killer.
What?
Destruction and corruption are beautiful forms of creation in themselves.
I don't sound like that.
You absolutely sound like that.
No, you absolutely sound like that. Yeah, see? Two can play at that game.
You're fucking stupid.
Such righteous boys. Yet all is demon solid noise.
Shit, alright, if you're gonna rhyme everything, then just kill me now.
Alright, so yeah, not my favorite genre of voiceover for gaming or game writing, certainly. Of course, I disliked this routine over a decade ago when it was coming out of Nathan Drake, and everyone else thought that was apparently delightful, so I'm not sure what the problem is supposed to be. I mean, I recognize the most obvious differences, but I also recognize I'm not the one to be judging whether that's entirely the issue or not, or for whom. My expertise in these matters would be to note that popular culture has always found a way to decide that women in their teens and early 20s are supposedly the most annoying people ever in some specific way, regardless of error, and to make caricatures thereof special target for isn't that specific type of person annoying as hell. Like, even Bugs Bunny used to get in on that gag.
What you got in the basket, gorgeous? Got a little bunny rabbit which I'm taking to my grandma's to have, see? Grandma, what big eyes you got? Yeah, I know, all right, big eyes, yeah, I know. Come on. I'll do it, but I'll probably hate myself in the morning.
But if you were also seeing this one go around and take its drubbing, or on similar lines, the trailer for the new Dungeons & Dragons movie, which I actually think looks like decent fun but came in for that sort of lashing or deciding to have some levity among its dialogue, though you might not have noticed since everything D&D related got overshadowed completely in the news cycle, or whatever news cycle D&D gets to have, by people being upset at Wizards of the Coast for more actually substantive reasons. Either way, in both cases, if you watch the critiques play out with any sort of regularity, you were sure to see one way of describing it negatively over and over. Apparently, this is Marvel humor. Now, I feel like I don't need to point out that the first things that's off about this is that neither of these are Marvel things in any way. One game is made by Square, who I guess made a Marvel game at one point, so okay, I guess there's that. The other is a movie from Paramount. Neither of them are from Marvel Studios, though, or even Disney. It's not a Marvel property. It doesn't have a meaningful connection to, like, Joss Whedon or anybody, since Whedon speak was the misapplied general criticism for character is being witty in a genre thing before Marvel writing subsumed it in cultural discourse. The point is, neither version of that has ever been a real, singular, quantifiable thing, but you probably do know what people think they're referring to with that as a criticism.
You say utopia, but what I'm hearing is kill everyone.
And I really don't want to find a new dry cleaner.
Your funny but not too funny banter will not save you, Magnesium Man.
Yeah, but it did distract you, didn't it, Dad Bod?
Right, yeah, characters who seem to like the sound of their own voice doing witty banter or clever remarks, but not necessarily to the point of parody during action scenes where the purpose isn't so much to tip things over into outright comedy, but to reinforce a kind of presumed one-to-one relatability vector with the audience, a kind of tacit acknowledgement that genre films by their nature operate within the realm of reliable formulas and repeated motifs, and that the characters we're meant to identify with share our assumed recognition of this, albeit one that stops a few key steps shy of outright breaking the fourth wall, because fourth wall breaking is a specific different thing that in this context only She-Hulk and Deadpool do, so far.
He doesn't mean that.
So dark.
You sure you're not from the DC universe?
Not to necessarily be pedantic about it, but yeah, it does kind of make a difference to at least try and differentiate the undefinable non-definitions of these things, since the fact that Marvel writing is today a casual go-to shorthand lazy criticism that everyone seems to recognize the intended meaning behind, but also no one, if asked, can really pin down the coherent description that isn't more specific or detailed than just grabbing a handful of very different types of dialogue from across dozens of different movies from one studio, slapping them down next to whatever other recent thing they've decided is also bad, and declaring,
"They're the same picture."
And you know what's funny, by the way? If you've only ever seen that gag from The Office as a meme, in the actual episode, Pam is the one showing two purposefully identical images to someone else to fuck with them. She's not being shown two different things and making a sarcastic declarative point. Just saying, kinda illustrates the way mimetic pop culture call-response discourse distorts the actual meaning of things.
You just blew my mind! Our minds have been blown!
I mean, no wonder we have this whole different, incorrect way to describe what used to just be the way most protagonists talk to each other in mainstream genre movies. And I don't just mean sci-fi, fantasy, superhero, whatever movies. In the 90s, early 2000s, we had too clever for its own good action movie dialogue, and when we spoofed the over-reliance on it then, the satirical target was just called buddy cop movie dialogue.
You're under arrest. You have the right to remain disgusting.
You sure that's necessary?
You can't be too careful.
Why?
Yeah, why?
I was having a bad day.
Like now?
Like now!
Can we please talk about this later? I want to talk about it right now. Well, I'll see if they'll give us a timeout.
Glad you could drop in. You like jewelry?
She's a cop? You didn't tell me she was a cop.
This is obviously between you two, so if you can aim at him.
Can I die low, please?
We send the detonation signal. Goodbye, Yellow Brick Road.
Goodbye, Yellow Brick Road? You better buy some new CDs, Harry. It's pathetic.
You gotta say for yourself this time.
You gotta clean up on aisle 4.
Writing the good guys as being too cool for the room as if they were somehow cognizant of the motions they were going through was just, you know, one of the ways Western movie industry was able to continue making genre movies after the boom in self-aware genre satires like Blazing Saddles and Airplane and their various imitators and all the sketch comedy telling that same kind of joke became omnipresent in the mid-70s onward, like this Family Guy skit.
Passion of the Christ 2. Crucify this.
Man, you crazy, Jesus! You're crazy!
That's what my ex-wife said.
Oh, the son of God! You sure are a son of a...
Yeah, that was from Family Guy's first episode back after getting uncanceled in 2005. There was no MCU then, Iron Man was 3 whole years away. So in that context, not only did basically none of what's presently shot down as Marvel writing, or whatever you want to call it, originate with that particular set of films or in that particular time frame, think about how much of this so-called Marvel writing is spread throughout the most quotable features considered modern classics by many of those otherwise happy to dole out this tired, lazy pseudo-critique at more recent releases.
What's in the flask, egg? Magic potion?
Yeah.
Thought so. Good. What do we do? Drink it?
Yeah.
Good. I thought so.
This is my boomstick. It's a 12-gauge double-barreled Remington. S-Mart's top of the line. You can find this in the sporting goods department.
Are you a god?
No.
Then...
Ray, when someone asks you if you're a god, you say yes!
The possibility of successfully navigating an asteroid field is approximately 3,720 to 1.
Never tell me the odds.
Shit, yeah, right there. Look at how the dialogue in the original Star Wars specifically works. The bad guys and the one good guy, who's supposed to come from the old world that lost a war in the past against the bad guys, all talk like old-time static movie villains with upscale British accents even, while the good guys have more contemporary American personalities and faster, wittier lines.
Everything's perfectly all right now. We're fine. We're all fine here now. Thank you. How are you?
We're sending a squad up.
Negative. We have a reactor leak here now. Give us a few minutes to lock it down. Large leak, very dangerous.
Who is this? What's your operating number?
But you know, if you're a fan of irony, this might be my favorite. If you've engaged with the Marvel writing, or every movie tries to sound like the MCU now and that's bad because reasons, criticism at any length from either end, you've probably heard the supposed style summarized by what's allegedly the most obvious occurring example of the form. So that happened, or so that just happened, basically the generic catch-all form of the they fly now beat from The Rise of Skywalker.
Oh, they fly now! They fly now? They fly now!
And again, pretty much everyone gets what this line is supposed to be, or supposed to be a reference to. A quippy, sounds like a joke, has the rhythm of a joke, but not necessarily a joke line, placed in the one-liner acknowledging the action beat, goes here, space of a scene, as a post-ironic acknowledgement of that space existing, and the use of those familiar screenwriting and editing beats to convey narrative momentum, while also affecting a slight air of too cool and aware of this to actually write a gag in this space. So instead, we'll just acknowledge the fact that all those lines ever really serve to do is punctuate the fact that so that happened. And when done too often, or even not often, but unearned, yeah, that sense of apparent too good to be doing this approach can be insufferable. Execution dependent, your mileage may vary, whether it's true to Forspoken, this D&D movie, this or that new Marvel thing, or whatever, but here's the bit of irony I happen to love that nobody seems to remember until I get to point it out. So now I'm going to point it out. The origin of So That Happened as funny movie dialogue does not come from the MCU, or from a superhero movie. It's not from a Joss Whedon movie, or a J.J. Abrams movie, or a movie by anybody who started on Community, or The Simpsons, or The Daily Show, or wherever, any of the usual suspects. It's not from like a CW show, or an action comedy, or even a recent movie. It's from a 2000 David Mamet movie called State and Maine, which starred Alec Baldwin and the late Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Okay. Okay, you're gonna be all right.
So that happened.
Everything I know is a lie!
What does that prove? I mean, not much, other than Mamet is a better writer than a person, but that's also not exactly hard because he doesn't really seem like a great person. But it is funny. Now look, does this matter, or should this matter to people outside my specific experience of being a media critic, watching other people attempt and fail at stupid versions of what I'll happily admit up front is my already often very stupid profession? I mean, probably not more than anything important, no. But I do think there's a long-term problem outside of just being obnoxious that sloppy, misapplied critical shorthands like these pose when they become part of the discourse and get picked up as stand-ins to having actual opinions of one's own. Not nearly as much in this case as the news media letting right-wing ghouls redefine words or imaginary controversies like wokeness or CRT into the conversation as if those are real things. But it's definitely part of that same making ourselves dumber on purpose frog-boiling bullshit, and often enough it's coming from that same disingenuous anti-intellectual instinct. Flattening out criticism, stifling actual discussion, and replacing complicated nuanced analysis with binary arguments where you just shout slogans back and forth and dismiss something out of hand sight unseen because it seems like or you've heard it's the same as some culture war signifier that a cable news propagandist or a skeevy beardo on YouTube told you you're supposed to be against.
Unless we're not embarrassed to be made fun of by MSNBC. Oh, you're obsessed with gas stoves. No, you're obsessed with gas stoves, buddy. You're obsessed with controlling my life, and I'm not going to let you. Come and take it. How's that?
Look at United States of America right now. What is more important to our culture than the Joker?
Oh my God, she said dwarf of color.
They're part of the victim coalition here in the United States, and you have to hear it from She-Hulk.
They're going after the children.
Of course they are. But again, what's the point of video games? It's for kids to be kids. Now you sit down, pick up a controller, and they're like, by the way, the world's on fire. Ah!
Major red flag, which was right here. It's like Bo Peep, Ray Skywalker. You got Peach just taking charge. Stands up. Right there, like right at that moment right there when I saw that.
It's pretty obvious that this is like a female power fantasy type of game, and when this game eventually bombs, I think it'll prove that this sort of thing will not sell in the game industry, no matter how much you want to pretend that 50% of all gamers are women, or whatever the newest study has claimed. And man, this is another one of those games, just like Horizon Forbidden West, where everyone is ugly. And I just don't know why. It has to be intentional. BlackRock had to have funded this game, dude. There's also a part where there's like a morbidly obese librarian woman who just looks horrible. How the hell are there even obese poor people in medieval times?
Also less sexy. That's progress. M&Ms will not be satisfied until every last cartoon character is deeply unappealing and totally androgynous. Until the moment you wouldn't want to have a drink with any one of them. That's the goal. When you're totally turned off, We've achieved equity. They've won.
What the hell is wrong with you people? At which point the damage is done, right? Because who even wants to try to have a meaningful conversation about any of these things? I know for a fact that even with this level of extremely mild pushback, just in terms of be more thoughtful about why you dislike something, because reflex critiques like, duh, that sounds like Marvel movie where they make the joke words, doesn't mean anything and you sound like a fucking imbecile, is gonna fall on a lot of deaf ears because all anyone will hear is someone not full stop agreeing with a generic sentiment of popular thing bad and write this entire piece off as mid-mainstream, dismissible, defending Disney.
You hate America! You like the terrorist!
When the irony is, the only people who win in that scenario are the big corporations like Disney and their various corporate market competitors, because just like in the political sphere, the stupider the noise is, and the more everyone just retreats into self-reinforcing tribal bubbles with no want to challenge yourself or expand your mind, the easier it is to sell you weaker versions of the same shit over and over again. So I say again, watch more things, any other things, gain media literacy, or at the very least when you hear smug people dismissing this or that thing with tired, supposedly self-evident, empty cliche analysis like, oh that's Marvel writing, or that's Zoomer humor, ask if they can elaborate what they mean by that, or better yet, what's supposed to be wrong with that in the first place, because nothing exposes the empty head of a fraud like a follow-up question. I'm Bob, and that's the big picture.
So that happened.